All right, we're live, so we can go ahead and start at 7, Matt. Who are we missing? All right. I suppose I'll keep my mask on as long as you're here.
So who runs the meeting? You?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mostly him. It's both of us. Come on. He'll bring us in at 7. Do we have everybody? We do. So if I leave that on, but I'm on mute, they still can't hear me, right? It has to be both. Okay.
So we can start.
Matt, are we ready to start?
Yeah, at 7 o'clock we can get started.
I think so. Do I need to be a co-host?
We'll make you a co-host.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Thank you. All right. So we're live. I'll call this meeting to order. It's being conducted in accordance with State of California Executive Order N2920, dated March 17, 2020. All members of the Rental Housing Committee are participating in this meeting by video conference with no physical meeting location. Members of the public wishing to observe the meeting live may do so at mountainview.legistar.com, on YouTube at mountainview.gov/YouTube, and on Comcast Channel 26. As noted on the meeting agenda, members of the public may provide oral public comments during the public comment period for an item by signing up at mountainview.gov/RHC_speakers. Any emails and voicemail messages received by 5 p.m. today were forwarded to the Rental Housing Committee. Emails received after 5 p.m. and prior to the close of the public comment period for the agenda item will be read into the record by city staff, and any voicemail messages received will be played by city staff. Now I'll proceed with the roll call. Calling to order today's meeting on May 4th, 2020. Start with the roll call of committee members. First, Susan Almond.
Present.
Nicole Haynes-Lidsay.
Present.
Julian Pardo-Dezella.
Present.
And Vice Chair Emily Ramos.
Here.
All right. We'll move on to minutes approval. This will be for the approval of the minutes for the February 10th meeting. We did not have a March meeting. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comments on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Staff will display the timer on the screen. Also, copies of the minutes have been delivered to committee members and copies are available at City Hall. Would any members of the public like to comment on the minutes? I'll wait a second for anyone to raise hands.
We had one
Looks
hand
like-
raised, but it looks like it went down, so I think we're, oh.
Okay, one hand raised. And again, this is for the minutes approval only.
Oh, there we go, okay. Looks like we have.
And was the hand raised from a committee member or a call-in member?
There was a comment for the attendee, but once you clarified this was public comment for the minutes, the hand went down.
Okay, all right. So if there are no comments from the public and no comments from the committee members, then we will move to, would anyone like to make a motion to approve these minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, thank you, Susan. Any a second?
I'll second.
All right, Emily seconds. Everyone in favor of approving the minutes from February 10th, say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3. Nicole, do that. I think I recorded everyone. Nicole, do.
I'm abstaining because I wasn't there.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so, and I'm an aye, so that's 4. So then we'll move on to the oral communications. So we have some new rules here. Bear with us. So this portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the committee on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are allowed to speak on any topic for up to 3 minutes during this section. State law prohibits the committee from acting on non-agenda items. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on non-agenda items? And if so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Staff will display the timer on the screen. Also, if we have more than 10 or more raise their hands, I think we'd move to have the time allotted be 2 minutes per person as opposed to 3 minutes per person. So if everyone who plans on speaking could please raise their hand.
All right, it looks like we have 7.
Okay. I count 7, so I think we can go 3 minutes each.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and
Then we'll start. Andrea, I'll let you decide who starts, I guess.
I'm gonna call on mobile home renter, and so I'm gonna turn on your speaker now, and you will have 3 minutes. Go ahead. Oh.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, we.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my name is Chris. I've been a mobile home renter for the last 20 years in the area. I've lived in the area for probably the last 30 years. Before I was a mobile home renter, I was an apartment renter, and I would just like to raise a point to the committee to reconsider your decision to exclude mobile home renters from the CSFRA. I think if you look at a renter of a mobile home, there's really no difference between somebody renting their mobile home and somebody renting an apartment. We have to sign a lease. We share common areas. We live by the similar rules to what apartment dwellers must adhere to. I think if you look at the original intent of the CSFRA, it was intended to address similar needs and issues that renters in mobile homes must face. So I think it's important that you reconsider this, and I would ask you to add this to your next agenda item. I'd also like you to be aware that residents of mobile homes are senior citizens, they're disabled, they're on fixed income. They have just as many issues as an apartment renter. I've been a renter for 20 years. I don't own my home. I don't own this space. I'm treated just like a renter. I have to sign a lease every year. I share common areas with my neighbors. There is no difference between me and a renter. And it defies common sense that the RHC could come to a conclusion that mobile home renters are excluded from the CSFRA. So please reconsider this decision that you made. It just is inconceivable to a mobile home resident that we aren't covered by the law and that we weren't originally intended by the people that wrote the law to be covered. And how you can interpret that we're not covered just defies common reason. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comment. Andrea, who's next?
Okay, next we are going to call on B. Hanson. So I'm going to allow you to talk and unmute you. All right, go ahead, B. Can you hear us, B. Hanson?
I think you unmuted me. This is Chris again.
Gosh darn it. It says that she's unmuted.
B, do you want to try again?
Now she's muted herself again. Can you hear us, B? All right. I'm going to try to go to the next person, and then we'll come back to B. So I'm going to go to Anna Morales.
Hi there. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. All right, go ahead and begin.
I hope everyone's doing well. I'm a lifelong resident of Mountain View. It's been nearly 40 years here. In 2014, my elderly and disabled mother and I, we moved into Sahara Mobile Village as renters. Like many others, we've been negatively affected by the pandemic. Despite what each member of this committee may individually feel about rent stabilization, they must acknowledge that it was the will of the citizens of Mountain View to pass it. According to the eviction moratorium passed by City Council, we are indeed considered renters and are entitled to this protection. So what I would ask is, if in this time of crisis we are considered renters, then why are we not considered renters when it comes to the CSFRA? Mobile homeowners and renters are among the most vulnerable communities, and a majority of those residents are senior citizens, including my mother, who is on a fixed income, and without me would not be able to live here anymore. They deserve for the members of the Rental Housing Committee to reverse their decision to exclude mobile homes. This is the right thing to do, and I am hopeful that this committee will see that and answer the outcry. Just because we live in mobile homes does not mean we should be overlooked and denied rent protections. Please get this issue back on the agenda. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank
Andrea,
you.
do we want to go back to B? Or?
Yeah, let's give B a try one more time. All right, so looks like you're unmuted. You can speak now, B. It might just be her.
You can get other people.
Yeah, maybe if you want to try to call in, B, so we can hear you, and we can come back to you. All right, we're going to go to Joan. Oh.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. So my
purpose in being at the committee is to remind you what the measure says, which is Section 1702 of the Mountain View Charter. It defines a covered rental unit as all rental units not specifically exempted by this article. So mobile homes are not specifically exempted. So the measure applies to us. I've never understood how you could possibly come, or how your predecessors could possibly have come to the conclusion that we weren't covered by the rent stabilization measure. So my plea is that you get this on the agenda as soon as possible and reverse the decision, which was wrong. Not only wrong, but I think that the legal counsel of Mountain View advised the committee that it was legally a bad idea too. And that's mostly what I want to say. Please put it on the agenda, and please get this fixed so that mobile home owners and mobile home renters are included. Mobile home owners actually are renting their property, and that's also included because it's not excluded. So that is my plea to you today, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, thank you. Next, we are going to call on Jesse Cardenas. All right, Jesse,
Hello.
you're on.
All right, can you hear me fine? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. So again, my name is Jesse Cardenas. I am a mobile home renter, and I have a statement here. Let me just go ahead and speak to you guys. So I'm a member of the Mountain View Mobile Home Alliance, but more importantly, I'm a renter at Moore Park Mobile Home Park. I've been a renter here for about a year after we purchased our mobile home, and I have a wife and two kids who are young in elementary school. So we've been pretty well established here in Mountain View, and we would love to continue staying in Mountain View. So everyone right now is currently under an emergency situation due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but many of us, including myself, have lost our income due to the pandemic. We have a cushion. It's a very small cushion because, again, we just purchased our home. So, you know, we're kind of in a dire situation here if nothing were to happen. But luckily, the city of Mountain View, working in step with you guys, the RAC, have went ahead and provided us some rental relief along with an eviction moratorium. To be honest, I didn't think that we would be covered under this protection, seeing how your committee declined or did not consider us renters in the eyes of the law. So at the last meeting with Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, along with the mayor, I went ahead and asked them. I just wanted them to confirm that, yes, mobile home renters are considered renters under the eyes of the law. Our mayor did confirm that, yes, mobile home renters, tenants, they are considered renters under the eyes of the law for rent relief and for the eviction moratorium. So hearing that, it just completely blew me away. And the hypocrisy of that whole statement is just outrageous. We're considered renters when there is an emergency upon us, but not considered renters under normal conditions. Like myself, there's many others who live under a cloud, ready to rain an exponential increase in rent on us. That is an emergency. We live in an emergency day to day, even way before this pandemic, under the threat of our landlords jacking up the rents 100%. There's nothing stopping them from doing it. So we are living day to day under emergency situations. You guys may not be, other residents may not be, so they may not feel it, but we feel it. So I and the 1,100 other plus homeowners and renters who occupy these mobile home parks plead to you to go ahead and just reverse the decision that was made. Allow us to be included as part of the CSFRA, and just give us our fair shake like we deserve. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you. All right, next we are going to call Alex Brown to talk. You are unmuted.
Yep, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey guys, long time. Sorry to miss you in March and April. I'm here with all of my neighbors to say the same thing. I appreciate them coming out. I think that our community is good about standing up for each other and reaching out to ask for help when we need it, which is now. A lot of us have been hit hard by this crisis, but even more have been forced out in the last few years by rent increases that they can't afford because there are a lot of seniors on fixed incomes, people with disabilities, people just struggling. And the first step to helping to protect us is rent protection, is rent stabilization, and inclusion under the CSFRA. We've been asking for this since 2015. If you go back to 2003, we asked the council then, and we're going to keep asking because it's right, it's just, it's what we need. When Measure D failed in March, the mayor came out and said that it's going to be difficult for city council to cover us with rent protections, which is a view. And whether or not that's true, we have been taken off their agenda, but the power exists to protect us now through the CSFRA, and that power is vested in you. We are affected by all sorts of crises every day, and this is one thing that could help to take a burden off of our backs, to take away a fear that a lot of my neighbors have about being able to stay in their homes. And it's something that you have the power to fix. We're all affected together, renters, homeowners alike. We are one city. We all need protection. Please help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
All right, thank you. Joyce, why?
Hello?
There we go. We can hear you. You can begin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm a mobile home owner and renter. I just want to say, many people who live in mobile homes are lower income or seniors. And I also recently, because of the pandemic, lost my part-time job that I had, and I was already on limited income. Being a mobile home owner provides me no protection. I still face the same issues that renters do, just like Chris.
Sorry, Joyce, we lost you. Let's try to get her back.
Hello?
There we go.
Okay. So I don't know what part I cut out on, but yeah, I have no protection. I basically what I'm saying is I need you to reverse the decision to exclude mobile homes in the CSFRA because we face the same issues that renters of apartments do. We need some protection from rent increases. That's the main thing that I want to say. Okay.
Thank you, Joyce.
Okay, we're going to try B. Hanson one more time. Okay, B, you should be able to speak.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Tonight you're getting back to work in a very unstable environment that we all now share. Mountain View's low-income renters in mobile home parks are becoming desperate after loss of income from the pandemic made worse by multiple increases in rent over the last 4 years. Your committee was charged with fairly administrating CSFRA, which was created by Mountain View voters in 2016, but you left more than 1,000 low-income mobile home residents completely unprotected. 2 years ago, RHC members decided we were not included in the law, despite advice of your attorneys that we were. Committee members who decided mobile homes were not covered by CSFRA said they feared litigation and got it, but from mobile home residents, not the wealthy landlord they feared. RHC ended up using his money to work against us, the renters CSFRA was designed to protect. Mountain View voters made their disapproval clear again in our March primary. Measure D, which was partially designed to write RHC's exemption of mobile homes into CSFRA, was soundly defeated by Mountain View's voters again. Mobile home residents have never stopped fighting that decision, and we are now a citywide organization of residents of all 6 mobile home parks. We meet weekly, and we have assistance from the original drafters of the initiative, Measure V, whose intent, as RHC's own attorneys knew, was to include mobile home residents by broadening the language of the original initiative. They did not mention mobile homes, but they didn't mention apartments either. You still have a chance to reconsider the decision made by RHC members over 2 years ago. Please put reconsideration of protection for mobile home residents on the agenda of your next meeting.
Thank you for your comment.
And that concludes public comment for this item.
Thank you. So we will next ask if staff received any comment via voice.
Give me 1 second. I'll double check. Staff has not received any email or voicemail comments.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll ask if there are any additional members of the public on the line who would like to comment in this section.
There's no comment.
All right. Thank you very much. So with the closing of public comments, we'll move on to new business. We're starting with item 8.1, quarterly financial expenditures, fiscal year 2019-20 through March 31, 2020. And we have a staff presentation from Anki.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Rental Housing Committee. Our first new business item of the evening is the quarterly financial expenditures for the fiscal year 1920 through March 31st. The purpose of this agenda item is for the Rental Housing Committee to review these financial expenditures for the third quarter of the fiscal year. As usual, we divide our expenditures in 4 key categories: personnel services, non-personnel services, capital outlay, and in-event expenditures. For personnel services, to date, end of March, 51.75% of the budget is expended. This is well below budget due to the vacant position of an administrative assistant. The salary scales that are being used, and work performed for and charged to other departments such as the CSFRA amendments, mobile home agenda items, tenant relocation assistance modifications, and COVID programs such as the eviction moratorium and the small landlord relief program. For non-personnel services, per the end of March, 28.71% is expended and a further 50% encumbered. This is below budget due to the quarterly billing of service providers that always happens a quarter after, lower legal fees, and fewer petition hearings. The capital outlay, 0 is expended and 21% encumbered. This is the budget for our IT database, and it's below budget because the invoicing for certain deliverables has not happened yet, and that will happen after completion of the next phase of the development. The interfund expenditures are 100% expended. That usually happens in the end of December, and that was in the amount of $259,000. So if you look at this summary, as you can see, 57% of the budget is not expended as per the end of March, and the personnel is the biggest fraction of the budget, followed by the non-personnel services. This ends this presentation. If there are any questions, please, I'm here.
Thank you, Anki. We'll start with committee questions. If anyone on the committee would like to raise their hand, you can make sure your question is heard. All right, so if we have no committee questions, we'll move on to public comments on this item. If any member of the public on the line would like to provide comment on this item, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone, and city staff will display the timer on the screen. Do we have any attendees who would like to raise their hand to comment on this item? Okay. Seeing no hands raised, we'll move on to committee comments and feedback. Apologies, I'm organizing my documents here. So, Anki, for this item, would you like directed feedback, or this just information?
This is information.
Next item? Yeah. Okay, great. So if there are no other comments from the committee, we'll move on to item 8.2.
So this item will discuss the proposed budget for fiscal year 2020 and 2021. The purpose of this is for the Rental Housing Committee to review the expenditures and revenues needed to establish a budget for the next fiscal year for the administration of the CSFRA.
Oh, I see.
The CSFRA empowers the Rental Housing Committee to establish a budget and a fee to recover the costs to implement the CSFRA.
Up to the camera. I could just put my phone up to the camera.
We would like to preface this budget discussion by acknowledging the mounting financial impact that COVID-19 pandemic is causing. This is already evident in our community, and it will continue long after the pandemic itself may have faded. Several measures have already been taken to mitigate economic impacts due to job losses and work closures, and this current budget, as presented, is a pared-down budget resulting in lower fees for the landlords to ease their financial burden due to the loss of rent income. This proposal today ensures that critical services under the CSFRA are being maintained, while at the same time acknowledging that this level might not be sustainable over the years. Staff deemed this lower budget appropriate for this upcoming year to aid in the recovery of our community. So this is the outline for the items we will be discussing this evening, and after discussing the items, we are requesting the input and direction by the committee. The next step would be, depending on the feedback received tonight by the Rental Housing Committee, for staff to bring back the budget to be adopted by the Rental Housing Committee. This slide shows the budget that was adopted by the Rental Housing Committee for fiscal year 2019-20 in the first column, compared to the estimated expenditures throughout the remaining of this fiscal year in the second column, and what is being proposed for the next fiscal year, and what the changes are between the 2 years. For fiscal year 19-20, most notably, the revenues are estimated a little shy of 1.5 million, or 62K lower than adopted. The operating expenses are estimated to be 850K lower than budgeted. This is primarily related to savings due to personnel costs, savings from office space and printing materials, postage and mailing, lower than budgeted costs associated with petition hearings, lower than budgeted litigation costs, and an IT systems cost not completely spent. And 146K is proposed to be carried over to the next fiscal year. As an overview, the total expenditures proposed for fiscal year 2021 is almost 1.9 million, and this shows a breakout by the type of expenditure. As in previous years, staff has proposed a combination of employees and third-party professional services. The largest component of the budget are the staffing and the outside professional services. If you look at what is proposed for fiscal year 2021, the combined staffing and professional services are approximately 68% of the proposed budget. This was similar to the current fiscal year. Staff has proposed the same staffing as this fiscal year, and the proposed budget for 2021 includes a total of 736K that consists of 4 dedicated full-time personnel and direct charges for the City Attorney's Office for legal services, as well as for in-house translation services provided by the City Manager's Office. The general operating expenses are miscellaneous, non-personnel, and non-contract service expenditures that are proposed for 2021. It includes outreach costs for Rental Housing Committee meetings, workshops, outreach materials, webinars, printed materials, postage and mailing costs for postcards, flyers, and newsletters. Advertising costs for clinics and workshops. We averaged 2 advertisements per month before the shelter-at-home order was given. And this also includes training costs for staff, Rental Housing Committee members, and hearing officers, and some general office costs. For the third-party professional services, the largest cost in this group is for legal services. They have the expertise in rent stabilization, and this is estimated what will be spent on regular operations of the CSFRA and the Rental Housing Committee. That would include the Rental Housing Committee meetings, legal advice, drafting of regulations and memos, reviewing materials such as forms and petitions, hearing officer trainings, as well as research and analysis. The budget for hearing officers is reduced, assuming a decrease in estimated petitions for this coming year. We based it off of 40 tenant petitions at an average cost of $1,000 and 10 landlord petitions at an average cost of $6,000. The litigation cost estimated for the two existing cases is $125,000. There is one mobile home case and one Redwood Villa case pending. Then the next one is Project Sentinel. He has been providing the Mountain View Rental Housing Helpline as well as administrative assistance with the hearing process and recruitment of hearing officers. They provide first point of contact services and address inquiries related to CSFRA via phone, email, and in person. Services are provided in English and Spanish and include counseling, education, and conciliatory services between landlords and tenants. There are also the following additional costs proposed, like the pre-hearing settlement conferences. We estimate that we can suffice with about 25 cases at $400 per case. Tenant relocation services is the same as last year, with about 17 cases at $300 per case. We have some facilitation services. We have kept that the same as the current year. We added KMVT since halfway through this fiscal year. We started broadcasting our rental housing committee meetings. And we added the data services by CoStar to track the relevant data points throughout the year. So this is a total of $555,000 compares to $704,000 for the current fiscal year. So the major changes are lowering of the budget for legal services, litigation costs, and decreases in hearing and petition costs. Information technology, 3DI continues to provide services to further develop features for our database system. Several phases have been completed, and it is anticipated the next phases will be close to completion in the next year. Therefore, we propose to carry over the remainder of the fund to the next fiscal year. The other ongoing annual budget item is for the annual software license for the database, which is budgeted for $39,000 a year. Then the city resources and the administrative support is to budget for indirect costs related with the implementation and operations of our program. We used city resources, which eliminates the need for directly and independently obtained additional personnel or services. Indirect costs include finance and administrative services, help with this budget, accounts receivable, accounts payable, payroll services, document processing, purchasing and contracts, IT services, HR, administration and management, office space, and other costs identified include an allocation for the general liability coverage, equipment replacement, and benefits for employees. The budget is adopted annually, so any funds that are not spent or legally encumbered, meaning contracted and committed, would lapse at the end of the fiscal year. And there's one item staff is proposing to be rebudgeted, which is the $146,400 for the database system. The reserve, the Rental Housing Committee had decided over the last 2 years to establish a 20% reserve for the CSFRA, which is a common percentage for the city of Mountain View to operate under. A reserve is established to protect against declines in revenues or if additional unforeseen expenditures would be required during the fiscal year. The budget contains currently a reserve of 22% already, which is similar to other city fund reserves. So the current proposal does not include a further reserve amount. So the rental housing fee is intended to be a full cost recovery for the cost of the CSFRA program. And the fee for the this fiscal year was 101. The year before it was 124, and for 17-18 fiscal year it was 155 per unit. There were also previous discussions regarding a petition fee, and at this time, if the Rental Housing Committee would like to revisit that discussion, staff requests direction, but based on the proposed budget, there is no petition fee inserted in the budget. Based on the 14,950 units, the fee would result in $84 per unit. And the city usually bills these fees together in January together with the multi-housing inspection program. Alternatives for the staff's proposals could be that the proposed budget could be reduced, and then the proposed fee would also be reduced. However, if the funds are not sufficient, staff may need to return mid-year for additional appropriations, and any shortfalls that may not be able to be absorbed could impact the fee in the following year. So staff is requesting any comments or direction on this proposed budget for the fiscal year 2021. So based on the feedback provided, staff will return at a Rental Housing Committee meeting on June the 1st for a budget and fee adoption. So this completes the presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Anki. So we'll start with committee questions, then move to public comments, and then committee feedback for Anki and team. Are there any questions among committee members? If so, raise your hand on Zoom, and we'll get your comment heard or question.
You want me to do that?
So it looks like Emily, you raised your hand.
Yeah. Hi. One of the questions I had was an understanding. The budget is a little lower this time because did we cut any costs? So we cut legal services because they weren't needed, or was any of these cost-saving procedures because we anticipate essentially a recession?
The costs were lowered looking at the estimated actuals for this year, and the budget was lowered to get closer to the budgeted actuals of this year.
Okay. And so with those budgeting, we didn't have that many petitions this comparatively to the year before, or to the fiscal year before, correct?
That's correct.
It felt that way, but I just wanted to make sure. Okay. And do we have a timeline when we'll get a new office assistant?
Currently, that request is at the Human Resources Department, and they're working on recruiting an office assistant. But as you can see, we did not lower the budget for personnel.
Okay. In terms of the COVID crisis, has there been an increase in need in terms of the helpline, reaching out to staff, changes how before you had workshops, now you're doing the webinars. Has there been any? I know that we've had those changes, but has that changed? Is that a fiscal change? Has that changed in terms of our budget?
That was not the major factor why we changed the budget for the materials and general office costs. We do foresee more webinars in the future. It seems to be a very well-used tool. People don't have to get out of their houses to attend one of our workshops. So in the future, we will do a combination of both of them.
I guess, I'm sorry, I should have probably been more clear. With the COVID crisis going on right now, are we seeing an increase in use that may require an increase in spending?
We're not seeing an increase in use. What we're doing right now is we give a lot of webinars on the eviction moratorium, which does not necessarily fall under the CSFRA budget. That is a citywide program. But we had great results with that, so we were thinking of also doing webinars for our regular workshops. Not exclusively, but both.
And I'd like to make a mention that we had in our communications plan to significantly increase outreach through materials and workshops and a variety of different methods that were to be implemented in Q3 and Q4 of this fiscal year, and we are not able to do a lot of that outreach effort because it was intended to be live and in person. So there is a decrease in our current fiscal year's expenditures related to outreach because of the pandemic. Hopefully that helps to answer your question, Emily.
She left. We weren't.
Okay, so this interplay between our budget versus the city budget, I believe that was part of what you called the, is that part of the, you gave it a special name.
I'm just saying that whatever we do, say for eviction moratorium, small landlord relief program, those are programs that we are being tasked to administer, but we charge the cost with those programs separately from the CSFRA budget.
Okay. So have we been sending out mailings during this time? Since the mailings I've seen were about the eviction moratorium. Is that from us or from?
It's from the staff. It's from the staff, but that program is formally paid for and administrated by the city. So that's not a CSFRA program per se. So that the costs for that program do not come out of the fees of the CSFRA.
All right, thank you. That's all I had.
Thanks, Emily. Nicole, looks like you had a question.
Yes, I just wanted to ask two quick questions. If we were to decide to do a petition fee later on, would that be something we could do mid-year? We don't have to do it during the budget cycle?
The Rental Housing Committee can decide mid-year to make a change to the budget. We prefer not to do that. Also, we would like the landlords to know what's coming in the fiscal year ahead so they can plan accordingly. But if you want to add a petition fee, the petition fee, the discussion we had 2 years ago was, what if tenants or landlords frivolously start using this petition process? That has not materialized so far. As you can see in our annual report, we had a total of maybe 17 petitions this year, which would almost invoicing for those petitions to be more costly than the petition fee itself, most likely. So, but things can change, and it's always up for rediscussion if the Rental Housing Committee feels they need that discussion.
Perfect. And then my other question is, we're cutting the petition budget by about half, I believe. And I just realized I lied. I have a third question. Sorry about that. But this year wouldn't necessarily be a normal year in that we had the Measure D, which I think it would be reasonable to speculate that some individuals may have waited on their petitions to see the outcome of that legislation. And then immediately following that, almost 13 days later, we shut down for COVID concerns. And most individuals are not going to want a stranger traipsing around in their home, taking photos, doing a hearing, doing an in-person meeting. So they may wait to bring their petitions, especially if it's a petition for an upward adjustment. I could see someone saying, well, I would like to get my upward adjustment, but I also don't want to put anyone at risk health-wise. So let me just wait until all of this has settled a little bit, and then I'll bring the petition. So I guess I just want to understand, if we had a budget of $100,000 as opposed to $200,000 for petitions this current year, the 1920 year, where would we be in terms of non-personnel expenditures and encumbrances?
Yeah.
Would we be over?
Yeah. So if you look at the second column of the third column of your budget, where it says estimated actuals for 1920, then you can see how much we spent per year for hearing officers. And if I'm looking at this correctly, that would be $16,000. So we feel there's enough space between $16,000 and $100,000 to kind of catch what may be coming to us in the coming year.
Time and everything.
I mean, my thinking is that this COVID-related economic downturn will continue probably the first half of the next fiscal year, where people are more worried about other things than filing a petition, and then maybe we can see an uptick again in the second half of the fiscal year, which we would then still be prepared for.
Okay. Perfect. And then my third question, sorry, I didn't realize that I had this third one. I just noticed in the budget that we're estimating a fairly decent-sized return on our investments. It looks like it's about $7,700 or something. Given what interest rates are going to be at for probably the rest of the year and the choppiness of the market, do we think that that's a realistic estimate, and how did we source that? We just ran through a great bull market, and we're going into a really choppy market, and I just don't want us to be overly optimistic about returns on investments, and I also don't want us to at all take sizable risk in our portfolio. I imagine the reserve is in pretty conservative stuff, and that's how it should be. But that's probably not going to lend to the returns that initially are being estimated.
Yeah, that is. I heavily leaned on the expertise in the financial department for that number.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, Nicole. Susan, looks like you have a question. I think you're on mute, Susan.
Right. I don't really have a question, but I wanted to say that I participated in the eviction moratorium webinar on Thursday, and I was really impressed. I thought it was very clear. It was well presented, and as a trainer, I'm always impressed by when people can give complicated information in a very simple and easy to understand way. So thank you, Patricia, and whoever else worked on it.
Andrea.
Yeah. Right, of course.
Both Patricia and Andrea did a fabulous job, not in presenting the information, but also to figure out how this whole Zoom webinar mechanism worked, with live questions coming in and being answered on the spot. So, yes, kudos.
It was fabulous, really.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, team. I just had one question, Anki. Seems like there's risk. I think just I wanted to acknowledge that the team, our goal was to get under $100 at some point, and I think in this climate, it's good that we were able to get well below that. Beside petition volume, which is, I think, always a risk, but I think we're getting more comfortable with the level of petitions that we're having year on year. What would you say is there any other big risk in this budget of us going over budget?
I cannot foresee any other huge costs that we are not able to foresee for this coming year. Unless you want to revise the whole program and you need a lot of legal advice and research. I think we will able to manage the essential services that we have been providing for the CSFRA. What I do think is that we were thinking of kind of restructuring the program in certain ways, and we just let that fall by the wayside for now. But we will come back to you in the beginning of the next fiscal year to start discussing the capital improvement petition process. So I think we'll be able to handle that within the current budget to kind of think about where do we want this program to go and what do the regulations look like, and put a process in place. The city's what was it called? The city is not planning on adopting an ordinance for mandatory soft story retrofits until probably 1.5, 2 years from now. So we still have time to kind of discuss this thoroughly and see how we want to shape that program.
Okay. Thank you very much. If there are no other committee questions, we'll move to public comments. So I'll read my script here. If any member of the public would like to provide comment on this particular agenda item, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone, and then city staff will display the timer. So I will look for attendees raising hands. We have at least one. Any others looking to raise their hand for this agenda item?
All right, we will call on
All right.
Alex Brown.
We have two. So, we'll start with Alex.
Hi there. I just wanted to echo the sentiments of several of the committee members. I think that anticipating a lower petition volume when so many people are going to be facing hardship in the next 3 months is very optimistic, and that hamstringing yourselves by cutting the fee and reducing the assumed budget now might come to bite you in the ass later on. I think that it's very likely that a lot of people are going to be struggling to pay the rent that they already have, much less face increases even with the AGA, and I would assume take a greater volume of petitions than you expect. I think that maintaining the revenue that you have now should be fine, and I think that if there are landlords who are struggling to pay the fee, they have a petition process of their own that they can go through to be able to claim their own hardship and achieve a fair rate of return. Thanks.
All right, thank you for your comment. And then we have one more attendee who would like to make a comment.
Be wise.
There we go. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah. So just to kind of build on Alex's comments and stuff, I find it, and again, this is my first time dialing into one of these webinars. I find it kind of insulting that my taxpayer money is looked upon like cutting the expenses that are supposed to benefit the program, while the people that are administrating the program seem to suffer nothing under it. So you're going to go and give a break to the landlords, and I own 300 units, not in Mountain View, and $84 a unit is not a lot of money. Particularly when you look at Mountain View rent. So I don't know where landlords are sitting there trying, or this committee thinks that somehow $84 a year is some burden. And so what you choose to do is cut these programs, the outreach programs, the petition programs and stuff, while maintaining $800,000 of salaries and consulting fees. That's my comment. I find that quite outrageous, actually. And you could have found that money there very easily. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Randy.
All right, and that concludes
All right, if we
the public comment for this section. And we did not receive any voicemail or email comments either.
All right, thank you very much, Andrea. So we'll move on to committee deliberation and feedback for Anki. Any of the committee members like to provide their feedback? And we'll start with Emily.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things I'm concerned about, I'm congratulations to staff on getting those costs down to be under 100. I do also worry about. I know our budget, our actual budget, or actual spending has not met up to our budget. I feel that this year and really at least until the end of this year, we probably won't get a lot of petitions, so it feels odd. I mean, we'll get, the type of petitions we'll get will be different from the type of petitions that we will have before. Particularly the petitions for upward adjustment, which probably takes a lot more time than, say, the tenant hardship petitions. The difference between the petitions are significant. But we probably won't see a lot of upward adjustments, largely because, or upward adjustment petitions, because there is still changes in the economics of what a landlord will be able to charge, since they also have another ballot initiative that can change that this November too. So that I wanted to think about that as we go forward. But I don't remember who actually said it, but we might see more hardship petitions, although there's special significance for each one. We might see petitions for unlawful rent increases. I worry about a lot of just cause issues, which will be another agenda item today or tonight, that we might see a little bit more activity on. I worry, the other thing is the roller coastering of the fees. It was impressive that we got it down to $84 per unit per year. I worry that it makes it difficult for us to raise it if we do have to. We started from the really high, I believe it was like 151 when we first started, and we knew it was going to go down significantly because we also had to front load the half loan from the city. But I worry that we overdip too much, and it's just going to be significantly more difficult to get support for raising those if we need it. So I want to be mindful of that, especially as we go into a very tumultuous economic time. That is largely my concern. I also would like a little bit more funding toward education. It's strange. I mean, this law has been in place for now 4 years-ish. 3 years. But people still have many questions and misconceptions about this law, and the more that we get that information out there, especially to the more vulnerable populations, the better. And it'd be nice to also use this time, if we do have that wiggle room in our budget, to do so. There are a lot of questions being asked right now, and I would like to be able to have a lot of more people being able to answer them, and we have to have that information out there in many ways. So those are my comments for the budget.
Thank you, Emily. And Nicole, you had your hand raised?
Okay, hi. Sorry about that. I was still on mute. So I have similar hesitations to Emily. One thing that was notable to me is that we dropped the landlord fee by almost 16%. Actually, I think a little over 16% from last year to this year, which is phenomenal from a relief point of view. And I absolutely think that giving our landlords relief on expenses when we're going into a recession in all likelihood is a good step, and it builds goodwill, and it's the right thing to do. I also think, though, to Randy's point, as he commented, $84 is a relatively small number, and while $84 per unit relative to what your income and your revenue from the unit may be is relatively small, that every dollar increase that we get helps out our budget by almost $15,000, a little under, assuming all landlords pay their fee and all of those things. We don't lose any units, etc. But let's say roughly about $15,000. So, I think about it dollar for dollar, and I initially reviewed the budget and thought to myself, wow, if we're going to drop it this low, how about we just go to 85? It's a round number, it's an easy check to write, and it gives us another $15K. I personally don't think we're going to get $7,700 from our portfolio. I just don't think we will. I don't think that's a realistic number. I don't know what we're in, so I can't say definitively we won't. But looking at what's going on right now, I don't think that that's reasonable necessarily to expect. If I increase the fee by just $1 to $85 per unit, I can offset all of that and say even if I get no income from my portfolio, I still know that I'm going to make that revenue. So I just think we're going a little too low, and we're getting good relief, and I don't want to not give relief, but I think I'd like to see us staying in the 85, 86 to maybe even 90 so that we can pad things like our education outreach, making sure that we have the money for hearing officers, making sure that we just can be there for our community and really support our community and support everybody, the tenants, the landlords, because things are probably not going to be fantastic for a little while, and this law has never been tested in a recessionary cycle. So we really don't know what we're going to see because we've never seen it, and we worked so hard to build up that reserve. We did really good stuff. I know last year, I think I was one of the people who kept saying, hey, let's make sure we cover that reserve, let's get it to 20%. The reason I wanted to make sure we did that was not so we could deplete it in a year. It's really there as our safety net to get through 2, 3, 4 years. So I just think we're doing a great job trying to offer relief. I think it's great we're offering relief. It's great to keep costs down, but I'm not sure that we need to have a 16 and change % drop in our fee.
All right. Thank you for your comment, Nicole. Anyone else like to comment? All right. I will. I'll just hearing what the other committee members mentioned. I'd be supportive of another dollar. If that's will. I think one item or one use to increase education. I do see the value, especially in all of the legislation that's being passed, of at least whether it's the city paying for some mailers or us. I think there's value in increasing education for landlords and for tenants. So, and if there's a little cushion that'll make the committee feel more comfortable, I'm okay with that. And if it's a round number, I'd be supportive of that. But yeah, otherwise, I think I hear the risk of increased petitions, but I also think the team, Unking team, have taken a measured approach to try to make this something a number that's sustainable. Barring unforeseen consequences or unforeseen events, but per that point, we are in the middle of a very unforeseen event right now. So I think it strikes a balance that I'm personally comfortable with, but I'd be supportive of what Emily and Nicole mentioned. Anki, is there any additional feedback you'd like to get from us specifically?
No, so let me recap. The feedback I got is increase the fee with $1, yeah, and then put the extra budget into the education and outreach budget item.
That sounds right to me, and I see some head nodding, so I think we're agreed there. All right. Thank you. So I think we'll sure, Emily.
I just want to mention I am supportive of more than $1 if it comes down to that for more education and reserve building still, but I just wanted to put that out there. Like $1 is fine. More than $1 would be great too.
So let me turn it around. Like, how much would you like to add to the education fund? And maybe we can figure it out the other way around.
Emily, did you want to respond to that one?
I guess probably no higher than $90. I mean, the main thing is I wanted it under 100 because that was what most people were talking about, getting it under 100. Once it's under 100, I'm pretty much fine with the fee at that point. I know that since considering that staff budgeted already at 84, so any other changes might seem a bit shocking, but it'd be nice to get a little bit more, because the budget will come back to us, and it'd be nice to hear more people weigh in on that now that they know that this is going to be a possibility for the budget, if they so choose to show up in our Zoom meetings or in person, maybe.
Yeah, I would like to say that the time for feedback is today, and because in the next meeting we have to adopt the budget.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead, Emily.
How much leeway do we don't charge them for these fees until January, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we'll set a budget, but if it happens to be that we overcompensate, we find out by January, could we adjust it from there?
You can always make mid-year budget revisions. The preparations for invoicing start in November, so we would like to have you do that probably at the latest in the beginning of November, if needed.
Okay, thank you. I guess I wouldn't go higher than 100, but I'm open to anything below that. But I'm feeling I'm more extreme than the rest of my committee members here.
Sure, thank you, Emily. That looks, Nicole, looks like you had your hand raised.
Okay, I'm off mute this time. So I think, the reason I like the $1, besides the fact that I'm just partial to round numbers, is we're cutting approximately $30K from last year's budget to this year's budget in the general operating expense category, if I'm reading this properly. So by getting approximately $15K back, we have halved the impact. And, some of the reasons why staff cites that they were able to cut so much from that portion of the budget was because of the work that's already been performed. We don't need to redevelop outreach materials. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. So that takes away some of the time and cost. And I think that, while going up higher is nice because we get additional funds in, and receipts in are always good. One thing I think we want to be mindful of is we don't want to give the appearance that we're padding the reserve or padding the line during a period of economic uncertainty. So I'd rather run a little bit lean and mean, even if it means I have to dip slightly into my reserves. But what I don't want to do is slash and have no wiggle room. So that's why I kind of was advocating for that dollar, besides my just being partial to round numbers.
Thank you, Nicole. And Susan, looks like you have your hand up. I think you might be on mute.
All right, sorry about that. I'm just wondering whether bringing it that low, and I don't know the answer to this, are we going to cut ourselves off in a few months when all the people are going to come to us because they can't meet their rent and they can't negotiate with a landlord, and there could potentially be a big uptick in petitions. So I'm assuming that we have enough in the budget to cover that because we haven't had as many petitions as we expected anyway. I'd like feedback on that.
Currently, we've budgeted for 40 tenant petitions for this coming year. If you feel that that is too low.
It's hard to know. I mean, we don't know how many people are going to be coming to us, after the 120 days is expired and they can't pay back their rent.
So the hardship petitions are for the hardship petitions can only be filed when a landlord charges previously non-charged rent and uses his banked increase. Mm-hmm. So those are way fewer instances than, say, tenants just not being able to pay the increased rent or just not pay the rent. Those are not valid reasons to file for a petition at this point.
I'm talking about when the eviction moratorium ends and people have to pay back. They don't have any recourse with us? Is that what you're saying?
No, they cannot file a hardship petition. What they can do is they can go to Project Sentinel and use the Mountain View mediation program,
right,
which is separately paid for by the city. So again, the CSFRA budget does not need to carry those costs.
Okay.
That's what you're hearing.
That answered my question.
And the other type of tenant hardship petition can be in response to a landlord petition, and staff is not anticipating as many landlord petitions in the coming fiscal year.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Julian?
So, I think we've done a really good job at outreach and education to date with the workshops and with the hotline and a lot of these other things that we've done. So, education is always good, but I think we've already come pretty far and done a lot. So I wouldn't really support going beyond, another dollar or so. And in terms of what kind of activity we can expect through the rest of the year in terms of petitions, I think it is kind of a guessing game. I think that the November election is going to have some effect on this because I think there's some people that are going to sit out, primarily landlords. They're just going to sit tight and wait to see what happens in November, and so that might result in less landlord petitions. And in terms of tenant petitions, I can see it a variety of different ways, so I don't really know how to anticipate that. But I think our aim should be to try to keep the numbers as low as possible. And just because we started out at $150 or whatever, or because another city is spending a lot of money, or we have before, I don't think that should be kind of the number that we're working off of, because I just don't want to be tethered to those high numbers and always kind of use those as a starting point, and I think I'd be more inclined to be a little more conservative fiscally, while also acknowledging that there's all this uncertainty in the next 6 months, and it is just a guessing game, right? So I guess I would just leave it at that.
All right, thanks, Julian. But so with that, I mean, I do have similar feelings that we should try to balance, keep it low, but also I hear what Nicole's saying about having some extra cushion, and yeah, that putting that towards the education budget could be nice. So it sounds like there might be a majority support for 85 as the number, and then. Yeah, I was going to say also keeping in mind, and we always have the option to think about the petition fee, as Aki mentioned, but I think right now I haven't really heard anyone mention going in that direction, at least for now. So, Aki, is that enough feedback for you?
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, team. I think we're going to do one more agenda item and then take a break, unless anyone would like to take a break now. All right, we'll keep going through. So we'll move on to item 8.4. Excuse me, 8.3.
Can everyone hear me okay? Item 8.3 is a presentation on the annual general adjustment of rent for 2020. The purpose of this presentation is to establish the allowed percentage of the CSFRA annual general adjustment of rent for 2020 and to adopt regulations for voluntary rent agreements to temporarily reduce rent. This presentation will be given in two parts. First, we will review the AGA, and then we will review potential regulations for voluntary agreements to temporarily reduce rent. So a little bit of background on the annual general adjustment. CSFRA Section 1707 states that no later than June 30th of each year, the Rental Housing Committee shall announce the amount of the annual general adjustment of rent, which shall be effective as of September 1st of that year. As a reminder, the annual general adjustment is the percentage by which the rent for existing tenancies in fully covered rental units may be increased per year. The increase can only be given once every 12 months, and it must be, the increase of the AGA must be between 2% and 5%. The CSFRA is a calculation of 100% of the Consumer Price Index, all items, for a time period ending in March of every year. However, the indices are only provided every other month. Either, in this case, February or April would be applicable. And therefore, the RHC chose to utilize a February to February index. Additionally, in January of 2018, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics revised the geographic area for which it produces indices. And on March 26, 2018, the RHC adopted a resolution to use the San Francisco, Oakland, and Hayward Index as a successor index for determining the AGA. Based on this year-over-year calculation, the AGA for 2020 is 2.9%. So once again, this is for a time period from February 2019 to February 2020, and there's a calculation that's done that indicates the difference between those months, and the CPI for that time period is 2.9%. So for implementing the rent increases, the AGA is effective from September 1st, 2020 onwards, and as required by law, a written 30-day notice of the rent increase must be given from the landlord to the tenant prior to the increase being implemented, and the property must be in compliance with the CSFRA. This means that all applicable rental housing fees must be paid, the property must be in good standing with the city with no outstanding code violations. the rollback must have been implemented correctly, and annual general adjustments and rent increases must be given under accordance with the CSFRA. And the recommendation from staff is to, for the first part of item 8.3, is to adopt a resolution for the 2020 AGA of 2.9%. Staff is going to continue the presentation for the second part of the discussion for item 8.3, and then we will go into questions and public comment as per norm. The second part of item 8.3 is for the consideration to adopt regulations for voluntary agreement to temporarily reduce rent. And a quick overview of legal increases under the CSFRA. They're limited to the AGA. There can only be once per 12 months, and the increase can only be up to 10% per year. So it can get to that amount either through banking of increases or through the petition process. And right now, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we see that some landlords are actively working with tenants to temporarily reduce rent to offset some of the challenges that people are experiencing with job loss and layoffs. Afterwards, it's been considered that perhaps landlords could then return the rent to the prior rate, but that might exceed the AGA increase or result in a rent increase that is more than 10% higher than the temporarily reduced rent. In order to offset confusion or issues related to the staff proposed regulations, to create an option for landlords and tenants to voluntarily agree to a short-term temporary reduction in rent, and that no changes to the other terms of the contract be allowed. And then upon expiration of this agreement, the rent can be returned to the rent prior to the voluntary reduction. And we're hopeful that this regulation will encourage landlords to reduce rents and work with their tenants during this challenging situation. And on a public health note, this would assist in protecting the health, safety, and welfare of Mountain View residents. Having tenants be able to stay housed during this time decreases the spread of the virus and allows for public safety through proper hygiene to be supported. And additionally, this would allow the landlords to maintain their base rent to the amount in effect as of April 30th, 2020 at the end of these temporary agreements. So recommendation 2 related to item 8.3 is to adopt a resolution for a regulation or voluntary agreement to temporarily reduce rent. And this concludes staff's presentation for item 8.3.
All right, thank you, Patricia. So we'll start with committee questions. If anyone would like to raise their hand. So Emily, we'll start with you.
Okay, so my question is about the second half, and I think most of our questions will probably be related to that second half one. In the resolution, not the resolution, in the procedure, that the regulation shall remain in effect until December 31st, 2020, after which time this regulation shall have no further force and effect. Due to the unknown, crazy nature of the coronavirus and COVID, would we be allowed to be a little bit more flexible on that? I don't know if it means that we should, I would rather have the short-term agreement be more, to be flexible to fit the short-term agreement. Now, the short-term agreement may be until August, or it could be all the way to like January, but I don't want our side to limit that. Is there an ability, if should this pandemic have a little bit more far-reaching consequences due to in time, do we have that flexibility, or should we? Would it be cleaner to do another resolution should that happen, or like an extension of the resolution? we don't know what's going to happen, and I want us to be a little bit more flexible to allow this to work.
Karen, can I look to you for that answer?
Yeah, sure. So I think what we're balancing here is that we're doing this regulation based on the state of emergency, and we don't really know how long it's going to go. You're right. But we are trying to keep it limited because it's a state of emergency. Hopefully it's not going to be a state of emergency that we're in for the next 2 years. We might be in reduced states of non-emergency but challenges. So, I think what would be better is if we leave it at December 31st, 2020, but that staff keep this on the radar and maybe we revisit it at your November meeting to see where we're at, and then we can readopt it with sort of the same findings if we're in the same situation or we see that it's been effective. But we also may need to revise it, and there may be something else that we need to do.
So it would just be cleaner to revisit when the time comes.
Yeah, I think so, because of the basis of this being the COVID crisis, without knowing the duration of that crisis, extending it is sort of in the unknown right now. So we thought this was a reasonable period of time, and it gives us enough time to see how it's working.
Okay. Thank you, Emily and Karen. Nicole, looks like you have a question.
Just two questions. First of all, it appears we're picking April 30th, but we went on shelter in place in Santa Clara County on March 17th, and that means that members of our community who immediately suffered job loss were scrambling to pay rent on April 1st. I'm questioning if there's any reason why we wouldn't use March 30 as our rent goalpost to accommodate those landlords who took immediate action to accommodate their tenant and let them raise their rent back up to what they were charging on March 30th as opposed to April 30th when they may have already done, what we could arguably say was a good thing or at least an accommodating thing for their tenants by lowering the rent in April. Is there any reason why we couldn't go March 30 as opposed to April 30?
No, I think we went a little back and forth at staff level on what the right date is. We picked April 30th because we're not adopting this until early May, and so we assumed it would be a going forward regulation, but I think we could pull it back to March 30th for the reasons you said.
Cool. And then my other question is, is the intention with this to allow landlords who maybe are not forgiving the rent but extending payment long term to recover that rent? Because I could see a situation where, let's say I'm a landlord, small property, 6 units. I want to help my tenants. I say, pay me X amount right now, but over time, let's say at $100 a month, once we come out of this crisis, you get back on your feet, I would like you to pay me back. It's basically a non-forgivable draw. Are we going to accommodate that arrangement as well and say that that doesn't count as a true rent increase under the CFSRA, or are we going to say, no, that's disallowed because we feel that this is more for if you forgave the rent completely?
So the regulation doesn't really address that level of specificity, so I think that's between the landlord and the tenant in that instance. What we were trying to address primarily was the problems that may be caused by the language in the CSFRA that would potentially make it problematic for a landlord to raise the rent back up. If the landlord and the tenant want to work on a repayment agreement, there's nothing in the CSFRA that really prohibits that. So,
very good. Thank you.
And from an eviction moratorium standpoint, should a tenant be able to make a partial payment of their rent, they would then, during the time period of the moratorium, have to, under the law, pay back whatever it was that they did not pay during the moratorium. That is written into that law, and it does not count as a rent increase in those considerations either.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, thank you. If there are no more committee questions, we'll move to public comments on this item.
Okay, looks like
So we'll go back to my script here. If any members of the public would like to provide comment on this item, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. I see one attendee at least that would like to comment on this item.
All right, so we'll start with Jesse Cardenas. And you are unmuted.
All right, thank you so much for your time. So I just want to, I don't know if you guys can answer any questions that I may have on the subject, but I just want to ensure that, hearing all of this talk, it makes me feel good that you guys are actually fighting for renters. Like it all sounds like really good work that you guys are proposing. So I really do truly hope that mobile home renters are covered under this, as they are under the Rent Relief Act and the eviction moratorium. So I'm going to ask that question. I hope. I guess my question is, are mobile home renters covered? And then second, I would just like to echo Mayor Koga's statement on the last meeting with Congresswoman Anna Eshoo in response to the rent relief and how it applies to mobile homes. So I'll just say what she said. In regard to a rent relief fund, that is for all renters, and we have included mobile home residents. It's actually based on income qualification. So it's for those who are currently 120% above of the average median income, which I think is about $120,000. So for anybody in the public who wants to see that, there is a YouTube recording of that meeting where you can hear her say it for herself. So that's coming from the mayor's mouth. We are covered under the rent relief and the eviction moratorium, and I really do hope that the good work that you guys are putting towards the rest of the renters in Mountain View is being put towards mobile home renters as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Jesse. If there are any other comments from the public, please raise your hand.
It doesn't look like we have any more comments.
We have one more from Alex.
Okay, Alex?
Yeah, might as well. This isn't bad for tenants. It's also, it seems like a net positive. I just wish there were more to protect tenants than hoping that landlords will be gracious and generous in this time. It seems like a lot of this hinges on whether or not they are willing to go out of their way to forego rent now without the hope of, without being able to immediately recover that. And I'm skeptical that there's going to be a lot of usage of this. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other comments, or Andrea, did we receive any voicemails or messages?
We did not receive any voicemail or email comments.
Okay. So with that, we'll close public comments on this item and then move to committee deliberation. If any committee members would like to speak, please raise your hand. We'll start with Emily.
Okay, I'll start. So starting with the AGA, I'm fine with that. That doesn't seem like anything we're going to really discuss. And then it comes to the voluntary reduction of rent. I am supportive of this. It's been the last 2 months have been quite hectic and long when it came to a lot of changes and things that are happening with a lot of tenants. We saw eviction moratoriums. We saw massive rent relief programs. You're seeing movements. I view this more as a good carrot. I thank you to staff for being creative and finding this wiggle room that we can do on our end to make this. It's been viewed as a ticking eviction time bomb. Because once those eviction moratoriums are done, we do have the issue of tenants paying back the rent. And I've been seeing, in terms of a lot of organizing on the county, state, and federal level, a lot of people are talking more about sticks to solutions instead of carrots. I'm very happy that we found a carrot through our committee to just put a little bit, just give a little bit of help to fight against the ticking eviction time bomb that we may be facing soon. So I'm supportive of both resolutions. If no one else, I see committee member Haynes Lipsey has a comment, but I'm ready to entertain motions for both resolutions. Do they need to be separate motions, or do they need to be one, or can they just be one?
They should be separate motions.
All right. I'll let committee member Haynes Lipsey then comment.
Okay, I just wanted to comment. I agree with Emily. It's a good carrot. I'm happy we're using a carrot and not a stick. I think the danger of a stick at this juncture is that there's not a homogeneous population of landlords, so the crisis will impact them in disproportionate ways as well. Some may be very limited impact, or perhaps their stockholders take the impact and it's really not an impact to them personally. Others may see a large decrease in their overall income, which then, if they take their units off the market, does not help the situation as far as ensuring affordable housing. So I'm pleased to see us using a carrot. One thing that I don't know if we would want to include, but I think it's something we could consider, is having the agreements be written just to ensure clarity, or maybe we recommend they be written or something, just to ensure that both parties are clear on what they're agreeing to. I wouldn't want anyone to hear, I'm going to give you a $1,000 break on your rent for the next 3 months, but I expect you to pay that back by Christmas, and have only the first part of the sentence heard, not the second, and then have for-cause evictions in, October, November, because that doesn't help the situation at all. So I just wonder if we want to encourage the agreements to be written, not maybe force them, but just encourage them to be in some form or fashion, and that's it.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Would any other committee members like to speak on this topic or make a motion? Actually, it looks like Julian, you'd like to speak?
Yeah, just quickly. I mean, I'm in support of both of these. I think they make sense, and so I think a motion is in order. But I just wanted to say that I think, to the extent we consider using a stick in this instance or others, I think it's, we're mindful that there is a ballot initiative in November, and I think it's that, you have enough sticks, and it's going to come out in November. It's going to affect, I think, potentially that ballot initiative. So it's just something that I have in mind, at least when thinking about how just generally to address these types of issues. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Julian. And Emily, with your hand raised.
So a couple things. To committee member Haynes Lipsey's point, could we have an example agreement on our own webpage for people to follow? So that makes that easier at the very least. Just making things easier for everyone, maybe except us, but for all the people here serving, the tenants and housing providers alike. But I guess now since most people have commented or indicated, those who indicated they wanted to commented, I would like to entertain a motion. I'll start with the AGA. I will need to read the resolution, correct?
I think you can just, the draft resolution the resolution to adopt the AGA is fine.
Okay. So I move a resolution of the Rental Housing Committee of Mountain View to adopting an annual general adjustment of 2.9% for 2020.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Thank you, Susan. All right, so we'll call for a vote. All in favor? I guess raise hand. Should we do that? Yeah, we can do that live. Okay. So I see, it's kind of tough. I see 3 hands raised. Is that correct? Or 4? Okay. I have to scroll through the gallery view there. Okay, so that one passes. Emily, were you interested in another motion for number 2?
Yes, I'll make the motion on the next resolution. The recommended changes, that doesn't need to be a motion, correct? It's not really changes, it's just like suggestions to make this easier.
I think that there was one change.
Karen, you're on mute.
Karen, you're on.
That I unmuted myself. I think you want to read into the record the one change that was proposed, if that's part of your motion, that the rent is calculated based on the rent for the covered unit in effect on March 30th, 2020, as opposed to April 30th, 2020.
Okay.
And can staff also request for the vote to do a roll call vote by name so that we can record people more easily?
Thank you. That's a good recommendation. Actually, I guess maybe. Well, make your motion. I do have a staff question regarding the motion.
Oh, okay. I'll start with the motion and then we can adjust from there. I move that we adopt a resolution of the Rental Housing Committee of Mountain View adopting amendments to Regulation Chapter 7 voluntary agreements to temporarily reduce rate with one change of paragraph, in the event of any such voluntary rent reduction, the AGA adopted by the RHC effective September 1st shall be calculated based on the rent for the covered unit in effect on March 30th, 2020 instead of April 30th, 2020. Is that the right one?
I will second that. That is the motion.
Okay.
All right, and we have a second. And then also, Susan, looks like you had your hand raised. Was that for a comment or a question?
That was for the past vote. I raised my hand that way.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So before calling for vote, I think one of my questions for staff, perhaps Karen, any unintended consequences for moving it back a month? Is there anything does that complicate anything significantly, or is it's pretty much the same?
I think it's pretty much the same. I mean, presumably, if they hadn't already entered into a voluntary agreement sometime in March, then it's not going to change it at all. But what this would capture by moving it back is potentially those situations where very early on in the COVID crisis, the landlord and the tenant reached an agreement, so maybe the April rent was reduced to address the COVID crisis, and that will cover them in this instance, and assure the landlords that they can raise the rent back up, in the future without running afoul of the CSFRA.
Great, thank you for answering that. So we'll move forward with voting on the motion that Emily mentioned. We'll start with committee member Nicole Haynes-Woodstead.
I vote for the motion.
Okay. I don't know, since you already seconded it, I don't know if that was necessary, but I'll still go through the motion there. Committee member Susan Alden?
I vote yes.
All right. Committee member Julian Pardo-Dazella?
Yes.
Vice Chair Emily Ramos?
Aye.
And then I also vote yes, so the measure passes. I'd like to just echo, I think, the praise that Emily mentioned for staff. I think that's a creative solution and helps us for those landlords who are who want to be generous. We should clear a path for that and not punish them with the CSFRA. So thank you to our team for coming up with the solution. Appreciate it. Okay, we're moving along pretty well. I think that we could either keep going through or we could take a 10-minute break before 8.4. Maybe just, if anyone is opposed to taking a 10-minute break, then raise your hand, I guess. Okay, so we'll come back. I'm going to stay on, just turn off my video for 10 minutes. We'll come back at 9 o'clock. How about that? All right, thank you very much.
in the Council Advisory Body's Handbook. And the purpose of this agenda item is from a request from one of the Rental Housing Committee members that they would like to adhere as much as possible to the Council Advisory Body's Handbook, specifically to receive no compensation and to abide by the removal by motion of the City Council adopted by at least 4 affirmative votes. In its meeting on May the 10th in 2017, the Rental Housing Committee already adopted the Rules of Conduct for the Rental Housing Committee. And in January of 2018, you also adopted a resolution to follow the City Council Code of Conduct and Personal Code of Conduct. On August the 1st in 2018, the City Council revised the Council Advisory Body's Handbook and included some rules and responsibilities and obligations of committee members, including appointments and removal, with specific references to the Rental Housing Committee as well. Since the Rental Housing Committee is not per se an advisory body, but has a unique role, the Rental Housing Committee members are still appointed by the City Council, and it's still a committee of the city. And the Rental Housing Committee is now governed by certain provisions of this Council Advisory Body's Handbook, including those regarding the non-payment of members and appointments and removal of members. As reflected in the updated City Council's Advisory Body's Handbook, Rental Housing Committee members cannot receive compensation for serving on the committee and can be removed by City Council. So a proposed resolution in front of you today was consider adopting a resolution to adhere and follow this Council Advisory Body's Handbook as updated. Including specifically that Rental Housing Committee members do not receive compensation and are indeed subject to removal by motion of a City Council adopted by at least 4 affirmative votes. That concludes the short presentation about this proposed resolution.
Okay, thank you, Arki. So for this item, we'll start with committee questions. Please raise your hand if you would like to speak. Seeing no questions from the committee, we'll move on to the public comment section. As with past agenda items, anyone from the public who would like to speak on this item, either raise your hand in Zoom or press star 9. All right, I'll give it a couple seconds here, but right now looks like there will be no public comment. Andrea, did we have any other voicemails or messages?
We did not have any voicemails or messages for this agenda item.
All right, thank you. So we'll close public comments on the item and then move to deliberation. Would someone like to begin to provide feedback on this item? Please raise your hand in the committee. All right, we have one. Committee member Nicole Hanson.
So I think this was my proposal. So I'll just say that because I think I reached out like 2.5 months ago on this. I would very much like us to adopt this resolution. I think that there is concern in the public's mind that we may do this activity for not always the best reasons. And if we close the door on compensating ourselves, which I doubt any of us are doing this because we think one day we might get paid for it, and if we close the door on the idea that we are untouchable once appointed, I think it gives a lot of confidence to the public that serving on the RHC is not because you want to skim off the top or because you think that once you're on, no one can ever remove you. It's really about helping the community and taking care of all our stakeholders. So that's my thoughts on it.
All right, thank you, Nicole. Emily?
I'm actually just ready to move the resolution if no one has any other objections.
Go for it.
All right, so I move that we adopt the resolution of the Rental Housing Committee of Mountain View adopting all applicable rules and regulations in the City Advisory Committee Handbook as updated. Is that all we needed?
I will second you.
All right, we have a second. And then, Susan, you raise your hand, or do you have a question, or you're on mute.
I just don't feel like it's necessary. It's just a gut response. I mean, I feel like Measure D didn't pass by 70% vote. I have never been accused of trying to get money out of this. It just seems like, I don't know who's going to actually read this resolution, or I can understand your reasoning, Nicole, but it just feels to me a little superfluous.
All right. Thank you for that. Are there any other comments before we move to a vote? Emily?
Julian actually had a...
Julian?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Susan. I mean, I think this is well-intentioned, but I think it's a little unnecessary. And, I mean, I think of it in the framework of a lot of what we've considered on unrelated issues is what the voters voted for, what their intention was when they voted in favor of Measure B. And lots of discussion we've had has been about that specific fact. And did the voters intend to do this? Did they intend to cover mobile homes, or did they not? And so the voters did, it was very clearly, design and adopt, through the ballot process, Measure B that creates RHC as this insular body where the city council could not remove us because the voters wanted us to be an independent body. And so now we're essentially undoing an aspect of what the voters wanted. And I don't know that's necessarily a bad thing in theory, but I think we just have to be aware that, we do this and now we're saying, well, we understand that the voters wanted this, but we're deciding that we know better than the voters. And I think at least when I've approached a lot of issues that we've confronted, I try to be consistent and kind of stick with what was enacted or what the voters thought they were enacting when they voted in favor of Measure B. And I think it becomes a little problematic when we just decide now to pick and choose and say, well, there's some things that we're going to just discard that the voters wanted, but we're just going to get rid of. Because, it's just easier to be consistent. And so that would be a reason why I would be against this, even though I think in practice and in theory and the philosophy I would completely, accept, and I think most of us would.
Thanks, Julian. Karen, I feel as though we've talked about removal. Did we take action on removal in the past couple of years?
No.
Or was there anything related that we passed?
Yeah, I don't think that you ever took action. We have discussed it because the question is, if the council appoints you, can the council remove you? In the research that we have done, it looks like that would most likely be the case. There's not a lot of case law on this, but there is some case law that indicates that if you have appointment powers, then you also have removal powers. And the CSFRA is silent on that fact, but it does say the council appoints you. So I think we've had this discussion with the city attorney about how that would be interpreted, because I think the last time you adopted the code of conduct, the removal section wasn't in it, but there was a question about removal. So
That's when we've discussed it, but we've never adopted anything.
I see. But so, Emily, your motion would include both removal and the no compensation clause.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm not too wedded to this resolution, whether we do it now, whether we do it 10 years from now, whether we do it. But I do see some value in it, even if it's very minuscule in terms of. I was very. I did see a lot of the fighting when it came to the ballot initiative in March, and it's just really fun where they would be like, "But you never know; they're going to pay themselves," and I'm just like, it's frustrating. It's more annoying than anything of like being out. What is that word? It's not angering. It's not something I feel outraged over. There's the word. It's just annoying. It'd be nice to fix the annoying at the very least. In terms of the interpreting the will of the voters, this is going to be something we're going to go back and forth no matter what the object is. So I view this as not. Is my understanding that the council can remove us? The fact that this might still be a question might be a reason for us to pass this in the first place, because that seems easier. I would rather not vote any of you guys off, because I like you all, and I don't want to be in that kind of position. I would prefer council doing that too, just on practical matters. So I don't view the harm is memorable, is small, and the helpfulness is small. It's more just like an annoying buzzing that you kind of just want to get rid of.
Thank you. Nicole?
My motion still stands.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah,
Nicole, you had a comment?
Yeah, I think the thing I really wanted us to do with the no compensation portion, I think the acknowledging that is most probable based on what Karen has said in the past, and I think this came up when we were talking about Measure D as well, the removal powers. I think we had a brief conversation about this as well at that point in our letter that we sent to council. That, it is probable that if one can appoint, one has the power to remove. I think that the compensation is held up as a bit of a straw man, and I would like to remove that straw man. I don't think discussions are productive when all we do is stab a straw man in the head. I think that doesn't advance public discussion at all. So that was kind of my thought around indicating that we would not compensate ourselves. I think that the removal power, if we didn't do it, okay, fine. I don't foresee a need to have any of us removed right now. As Emily said, I like you all. I don't think anyone needs to be removed. But I think that if we wanted to codify it, we could. So I would be open to either. But that's just kind of my thought. Is Emily calls it annoyance, I call it a little bit of a straw man.
All right, thank you. But for your seconding that motion, both pieces are still intact.
Yeah, for now.
Okay. All right, sounds good. I will. I hear Julian's point for sure about. First, for compensation, I would agree that just good to kind of get it off the table, provide clarity there. So I'm supportive of that. I have gone back and forth during this discussion on where I'm at for removal. I think Julian made a good point about the original text and the intent for us to stay separate. But again, based on the feedback from Karen, it does sound like in practice they probably have that right already. So I do see it as our role to provide clarity when possible. Since we're here having the discussion, I think it may just save some time later to provide that clarity here. So I guess I'd be supportive of both pieces of the measure, or of the motion. So with that, if there's no other comments, call for the vote on this one. So we'll start with Nicole and Elizabeth.
I will vote for the motion.
All right. And Emily?
Aye.
And Susan?
Nay.
And Julian?
No.
And then I am a yes. So the motion it'll pass 3-2. All right, thank you all. Moving right along to 8.5, CSFRA regulations for just cause evictions.
Item 8.5 is a staff presentation for noticing requirements related to just cause evictions. The purpose of this presentation is to have the Rental Housing Committee consider adopting a resolution and regulations related to just cause eviction noticing requirements. The CSFRA sections 1708E, 1709D2, and 1709E authorize the Rental Housing Committee to establish rules and regulations for administration and enforcement of the CSFRA. Unlike other jurisdictions that have extensive termination regulations regarding noticing, the Rental Housing Committee has yet to adopt any regulations for just cause for eviction protections, and the CSFRA provides just cause for eviction protections for most multifamily rental units in Mountain View. This is the dual part of the law where it covers both the fully covered units and the partially covered units. However, the law is ambiguous on noticing requirements for what landlords need to do to inform the city of termination noticing and what landlords need to do for tenants regarding termination noticing. Landlords seeking to evict tenants must file termination notices with the city, including those notices for non-payment of rent. However, the law does not define the content of the notices or require landlords to follow up with the city regarding the outcome of eviction proceedings. This leads to some challenges for staff and for tenants. The point of this regulation is to clarify termination noticing requirements as provided under the CSFRA and to ensure that tenants are informed of their rights and obligations when served an eviction notice. So this regulation is twofold. There are clarifications on what notices of termination should include when given to tenants. And this includes the basis for the termination with specificity. That means that it has to show one of the 9 causes, just cause for eviction, that the rental unit is covered by the CSFRA, that the tenant may seek assistance from the Mountain View Rental Housing Helpline, and that the notice needs to include the phone number for the helpline, and that in the event an ordinance is in effect regarding CSFRA-controlled units, a fact sheet summarizing the rights and obligations of such ordinance as provided by the city must be given to the tenant with any notice of termination. Additionally, the second part of this regulation covers filing of notices and complaints with the RHC. This regulation would put into writing that the landlord must provide the RHC the notice of termination within 3 days of service upon the tenant, and then follow up with the RHC about the outcome of that notice. If the tenant terminates the tenancy, or if the termination notice results in unlawful detainer summons or complaint or a judgment for an unlawful detainer. And those notices back to the city would have to be filed with the city within 3 days of vacancy or upon service of the tenant. So this would allow staff to more effectively measure the outcomes of termination notices and provide the city with data otherwise unavailable due to the lack of a mandatory rent registry or any other means. This information is essential for staff's ability to measure the performance of the CSFRA and continue to improve the efficiency, productivity, and community outcomes. That is really the goal of the programs that we run. And in light of the current pandemic situation, including the shelter in place and the eviction moratorium outcomes, it would provide us with an ability to track potentially related failure to pay rent termination notices and outcomes that we definitely would not have otherwise. So we could actually see what's happening and why it's happening in relationship to potential increases related to evictions after the eviction moratorium was lifted. And the recommendation from staff is to adopt a resolution of the Rental Housing Committee adopting regulations, Chapter 10, Just Cause for Eviction. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, thank you. We'll start with committee questions. Emily?
One quick question. Is there an easy way to do this with our current technology system that we are setting up for the landlords?
So right now, landlords file their termination notices with the city. They have to register and file them online through the portal that we've set up, and they would just do the same process, essentially put that follow-up notice with the city into the portal, which they've already done all of their heavy lifting with by having to register in the first place for the initial notices.
Thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Any other questions from committee members? All right. I did have one question. The process for landlords right now, it is governed, the eviction process, it is governed pretty strictly, I believe, as far as noticing, and I believe that if any part of that isn't done correctly, there can be, my understanding is there's opening for litigation. Can you, I guess, comment on how this would interact with the typical process that a landlord is already going through in Mountain View to evict someone?
So this would mean that they would have to include informational material within their noticing that they do not have to currently provide, and then provide staff with a follow-up as to what actually happened after that termination notice was served if the tenant ended up vacating or ended up in unlawful detainer court. We don't have any way to track what's actually happening after the termination notices are filed with the city. Because a termination notice is filed on a tenant, that does not mean that the tenant has vacated the unit or that the tenant has gone to unlawful detainer court. All that it tells us right now is that this notice has been filed. So especially with 3-day notices to pay rent or quit, we have no way of knowing what the actual outcome of those notices are. In other jurisdictions that have a mandatory rent registry, they're able to track that information through that registry because it shows them when units are vacated and when they're not vacated. But we don't have that at this time. So this would allow us to do that without making the registry mandatory.
I see. Thank you. And how does it interact with like Treo?
Go ahead. That is a whole separate process from tenant relocation assistance process. So it doesn't interfere. It doesn't make the landlords do double duty. It is a whole separate process.
Okay, but the documentation there I guess, do we have access? We already have access to anything from that program that regarding evictions or people who go into the program.
We have access to tenant relocation assistance documentation, but what we do not know is when 3-day notices to pay rent or quit are given. We do not know what the follow-up situation is after those 3 days are ending. What's the rent paid? Did the tenant leave? Did the landlord start a UD process? We have no way of knowing that at this point.
And just to clarify, sorry for all the questions, just to clarify what's in the CSFRA, the guidance is that this is a clarification of what the CSFRA already says, or are we enacting something that's net new?
So the CSFRA requires that property owners give us the initial notice of termination, where by regulation requiring additional follow-up.
And to follow up on the outcome, but already the details that we're already getting the notice of the 3-day when the 3-day notice is served. We're being notified as we should about that already.
Because we don't have a mandatory rent registry, while we do receive a significant noticing of that, which we actually have seen a decline in, don't think that there actually is a decline in them. Because it's not mandatory, we don't have a way to know whether or not landlords are filing the notices as they should be under the law.
Okay. Thank you. Last question is the other jurisdictions that are complaint-based that don't have a full registry. What actions have they taken to stay on top of eviction?
I'd have to research that further, but the regulations that most jurisdictions have very detailed regulations regarding termination noticing, and they go quite in depth on each type of noticing and what landlords have to do, and they're different and complicated. And we were looking to avoid that by having something that would not only allow an opportunity for tenants to learn of their rights under the law, but also provide us with some sort of data and feedback that we can't receive otherwise, without things being much more burdensome for landlords, like having a mandatory rent registry. This is really the cleanest, easiest, and I would say kindest way to get some of the data that we are seeking without having to go into the depth that the RHC has been resistant to in the past.
All right. Thank you very much. Susan, it looks like you have a question.
You're on mute, Susan.
Thank you. Sorry. It's really more a comment. I like the fact that it makes it all much more transparent and clear-cut, and I think it's one of the missing pieces for our tracking what's going on, and the fact that we would get that information quickly within that 3-day period. I think it's a terrific addition to what we're already doing. So, that's it.
All right. Thank you for your comments. If there aren't any other committee comments, we'll move to public comments. Actually, Julie, looks like you have a comment. Sorry, you're on mute. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I think you're on mute again, but looks like you're.
Sorry.
No.
I'm just saying. I'm withdrawing my comment. Go ahead.
Okay. Great. Sounds good. Okay. So we'll move on to public comments. Again, anyone who would like to make comments as part of the attendees, if you would either raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 on your phone, so we have at least one attendee. Alex, who would like to, up to, I would like to comment on this item. So,
did Susan have a comment before we started, or her hand is up?
I think her hand is up from the left.
I already made my comment. I guess I have to raise my hand.
I went ahead and did it for you.
Thank you.
All right, let's start with Alex Brown.
That's me. Hey. It seems like you guys are just tying yourselves into knots and complicating things in order to get a little bit of information that is a fraction of what you actually need to be able to administer this program effectively, because you don't want to have a mandatory rent registry, which would be able to give you all this information and more in order to be able to effectively protect renters in Mountain View as tasked by the CSFRA. And that instead of trying to make complicated systems that kind of get at some information that would help, you get a lot of information that would give you a lot of power to be able to make effective decisions by just implementing a mandatory rent registry. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. We have one more commenter.
All right, Anna Morales. There you go.
Hi. I would like to say I agree with Alex, but I also think that definitely passing that should happen in the committee, but actually thinking about a mandatory registry could be exactly what you guys need. Yes, it could be more work, and we do appreciate all the hard work you guys do. Like, just sitting here in this meeting, like, it's evident you guys are really working hard, but it could be something that could be worthwhile, and I would appreciate you guys thinking about that or adding that to the motion. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for your comment. If there are no further comments from the public, we'll go back to deliberation of committee members. Would anyone like to start on this topic? Not seeing any hands raised. Oh, okay. Sorry, spoke too soon. So Julian, you're first.
So, I mean, my only concern really is with the 3-day time period. I mean, if this is really primarily about data collection, then this can, it can be 10 days, not 3 days, let's say. And I just think that when it's only 3 days, what inevitably is going to happen is that someone is going to play gotcha where it's an eviction or some other kind of proceeding and say the landlord didn't provide this timely within 3 days, let's say it was 4 days late, and then interject that into, the unlawful detainer proceeding or, what have you, as a way to say that the landlord's not complying with Measure V. And I think that also, some of the literature we have, some of the forms we have that we've generated, and I think even some of our regs have used that very broad language about how landlords aren't entitled to certain kinds of relief unless they're in full compliance with Measure V. And maybe it's way out there, but I think there could be instances where you're going to have some kind of proceeding with perhaps a really aggressive hearing officer, and they're going to. This is an opportunity to say, well, you're giving the data 4 days rather than 3, and so you're not compliant with Measure V. So, I mean, if this is really just about gathering data, which I support, and I think there's a lot of reasons why this makes sense, I would say this is fine, but it shouldn't be 3 days. It should be 10 days, and why make it that rushed? And the reason in part I say this is because, I think a lot of who we've seen come before us that's really had trouble grappling with Measure V have been the mom and pop landlords who don't have the time or the resources to constantly keep up to date with all of the regulations that we keep on enacting. And so this is just another thing that potentially they might not be aware of right off the bat when you're dealing with an eviction, and that's not your top priority, getting this data, filed within 3 days. And so, it's just another hoop to jump through. And I think the large landlords are not going to have any trouble with this, but the mom and pop landlords that come to us and have told us how they're feeling overwhelmed keeping up with the regs. This is just one more example of that. And I think if we put it out 10 days or what have you, it's a little more likely that we're going to get the compliance without really hurting people that would like to comply but can't because they don't have the time and the resources to keep up with these ongoing regulations that we keep enacting.
Julian, for clarification, are you specifically looking at the 3-day notice, the 3-day filing with the city for the follow-up noticing with us?
So I'm looking at, I guess, Section B with the file with the RHC within 3 days of service.
So that, Karen, can you provide clarification on that first noticing?
Yeah, so that actually is in the CSFRA. The CSFRA currently requires that landlords provide their notice of termination to the RHC within 3 days of filing. So to keep it consistent, we put the 3 days in here, and that's what the law says. I mean, that is for the notice of termination. For the other notices, we could give more time if that's what the RHC wants. But for that initial notice of termination, we do have the 3-day notice.
Okay, so it's primarily, so it's just kind of consistency to keep this always 3 days. I mean, that's the reason.
Right. That was the reason, because we were, currently property owners are providing their notices of termination within 3 days because that's what the CSFRA requires. So any of the follow-up notices, it seemed like 3 days. Everybody hopefully can remember 3 days. But as I say, for anything other than that notice of termination, we could do a longer term.
Okay. I mean, that's helpful. I think that's helpful. So, I mean, I'll consider that, and it makes more sense when you explain it that way. So, thank you.
Nicole, do you have a question or a comment?
To Julian's point about the follow-up notice period as far as the results, I think giving a little bit more than 3 days does make sense. I think that, Julian's point around mom and pop landlords have a harder time sometimes complying, keeping up with the regulations just due to it being a lot of volume of information and pretty fast turnaround times at times. Also, I think that and I don't know how often this happens, but if a landlord says, I'm going to file for just cause eviction, and the tenant says, I will pay you the rent on Friday, and it's outside of the 3 days, you're kind of hamstringing them that, oh, well, I have to give feedback. You just give them an excuse to not give the tenant any leeway. Oh, well, I have to give feedback to the city or to the RHC, so I'm sorry, you have to pay it by Wednesday. And you just take some of that, you just insert urgency that maybe doesn't need to be there. So I could see a reason to say that the result of the notice could follow within 10 days. I don't think that's an unreasonable request.
All right. Thank you, Nicole. Looks like Susan also had a comment.
And staff does want to clarify that it's when, in the current draft of the regulation, that it's the landlord providing notice to the RHC when the tenant vacates the unit. So it's within 3 days of vacancy of the unit. Just to further clarify that final sentence.
All right. Susan, you had a comment?
You're on mute there, Susan.
I am sorry. I'm still getting bad at that. My feeling is I kind of agree with the public comments. I think it would be much easier, and I think I said this originally when we discussed the possibility of mandatory registry. I think that's just much cleaner. It's much more transparent. People will get used to it. Landlords will get used to it. I don't think it would be a big burden for them. And then we would really know what's going on. But I realize this is probably not time for that discussion. I would like us to revisit it.
right, thank you. Emily, any comment?
Yes, I would also love a rent registry, should that become possible and an option eventually. I don't mind this being as a stepping stone to it. It will, it actually provides more incentives for our housing providers to sign up onto our technology platform. And the more we have people on that, at least on voluntary means, the better. And if this is just another carrot to do that, that would be great. As someone who has been a recipient of many 3-day notices, and then, oops, they took that back because we ended up paying it after. I had a roommate that was very late many times earlier, but I'm fine with the 3 days after the tenant vacates. What I'm curious about is, so what happens if you get the notice about the 3 days, and then they pay it, the tenant does pay it, as what happened many times in my wonderful rental life. Do they contact you saying, just kidding, they're still there?
No, what the regulation requires is only if the tenant vacates. So, because we thought that would be simpler than, but you're right, a lot of 3-day notices are given and then people pay, but it may take a while, and when they pay, so it's only if the tenant vacates they have to get the notice.
I also remember early on in my time on this committee that I had the opportunity to go through the binders of eviction notices. This was very early on during our time, and it was interesting because it was a broad. Back then, I'm hoping it's better now for you all. Back then, it was a very broad what was considered an eviction. A notice, because I remember the one I found interesting was there was literally one that was like a letter saying, it'd be great if you move out. And we're just like, that's not quite what we were looking for. But that was very early on, and I hope that you have better odds this time. But the big one I remember is if we look at our, we will look at our monthly reporting, and one of the things is the eviction notices. And I remember we asked to have the failure to pay rent notices removed from the rest of the graph because it was just kind of ridiculous. Most rent evictions were the failure to pay rent, and it's interesting because if they are scenarios of like me, where we did pay maybe a day or so later, those weren't actual evictions. And I think that's the real data we need. We need to know the actual evictions, but they're only required to send us notice of the first notice, if that makes any sense. So I think that's the reason why that this is so important, because our data is faulty in the way we are collecting it. Not faulty, because you guys are doing an amazing job. I love you all. But the data, the way we are collecting the data is not conducive to proper data analysis. So that's what makes this important. Like what the public commenter said and committee member Allman said, a rent registry would make this easier, but staff is responding to our initial pushback to doing that. So I'm happy to do this now as a nice stepping stone. We ease people into these regulations, and it will be better off for most people. Also, if we are concerned that landlords are having trouble keeping up to the regulations, this is why I wanted a little bit more money in the budget for education. So just a plug for that.
All right. Thank you, Emily. So I'm kind of hearing, I'll just put my comments in here and see, where we get with the motion. But, I can imagine that if the tenant does vacate, that, the landlord has a lot of duties regarding turnover and turning over the unit, trying to attract new tenants. There's a lot going on, so I do hear if this is primarily for data collection, if we could give them a few more days to get us that, get us the paperwork. I feel comfortable with 7. I don't know how everyone else feels there. Also, I think one thing that I heard that's somewhat concerning from Julian is the mention that what's the consequence of not providing it within, let's say we said it was 7 days. Are you then out of, not adhering to the CSFRA, and then that's other consequences with that. You can't raise rents, you can't do a lot of other things. That paperwork, having data collection is important, and then and adhering is important, but I would also want to make sure that, if you're out of compliance, that it's easy for you to get back in compliance by providing paperwork, that it doesn't have farther reaching consequences. That'd be my only concern there. So Karen, I don't know if there's you could foresee any issues, anything that would cause significant consequences for a landlord just by, if they were a couple days late with the paperwork.
So the CSFRA currently provides very explicitly that the failure to provide the notice of termination to the RHC within 3 days is a complete affirmative defense to the eviction. We did not put that in the regulations with regard to the other notices, but that is already in the CSFRA.
I see. But then what we're recommending today to collect what was the ultimate result of that notice, if the tenant did vacate, would that fall in line? Is the proposal in the regs that would fall in line with the rest of the other noticing that we have?
We didn't explicitly put anything in there. I don't think that it would be a defense to any eviction. Obviously, it was already vacated because the CSFRA only includes it as an affirmative defense for the initial notice of termination. Whether it's a failure to comply with the RHC or with the CSFRA, conceivably, but I will say at this point, hearing officers aren't really tracking the notices with the hearings. So I'm not sure that there would be any consequence. We could make it explicit. That's the desire of the RHC.
Julian, you had a comment?
Yeah, maybe staff can help me, because I think there was a form that we had generated a few months ago that where there was a certain relief that was requested for landlords, and on the form, you had to recite, if you were a landlord, that you were in compliance with all aspects of the CSFRA. I think I brought it up at one of our meetings why that language was included, and so it's a type of thing where I understand that a hearing officer might not be looking at these notices on her own or his own, but certainly I can see instances unrelated to a specific eviction where an advocate can say, well, listen, we're dealing here with a landlord that isn't in compliance with the CSFRA because 2 months ago there was this eviction or a series of evictions, and they were late providing these notices. And so now you, the hearing officer, should not give them the relief they're requesting. And so I guess my question to staff would be, does anyone recall the form I'm referencing where there was language in there where a landlord had to make some sort of representation that they were in full compliance with the CSFRA?
That's in the petition.
Okay, so
it specifically, but it also specifically states what that means in the petition, so that they've paid their rental housing fees, that they have no code violations, that they have given the rollback appropriately, that they haven't increased the rent more than once every 12 months, and that they've increased the rent as applicable under the law. So we've also had regulations regarding other aspects of the law that had a similar concern that, basically said that that would not constitute a compliance issue with the, like a significant compliance issue with the CSFRA. So, as Karen was saying, I think that this could be taken that way as well. A major piece of this that would be out of compliance potentially is that the part that is already mandatory, that they give this notice to the city of the initial termination notice within 3 days of that notice being given to the tenant. But I can tell you from working with the landlord, we've not received any issues or challenges during petition processes related to that at all.
Okay. All right. Go with Emily.
The other factor that I'm also thinking about when it regards to just cause for evictions is that we, like I mentioned before, we are walking down a ticking time bomb of evictions coming up soon, dealing with all the COVID stuff. The data that we actually get from the housing providers will have huge implications, not just for our city and how we are managing our program, but for the county, the state, the nation. So the best that we can do to gather this data is going to be very important. I'm always concerned. I'm glad that no one really pushed back on the letting the tenants know their rights, because that's important, and that seems to be an issue even after all this time. And like I said, the more education we can put out there, the better. Education is good. So unless there's anyone else talking, I would like to move the staff's recommendation and the resolution. Unless we are discussing some more.
Can I just clarify that in the packet there are actually two versions of the regulation, and I think the one that we wanted is the one that is attached to the resolution. So presumably that is the one that you are moving, as opposed to the one that is directly behind it.
I only see one I see a resolution on one side and a regulations on the other side. Is that the right one?
The one that says Exhibit A, Chapter 10, just cause for eviction.
That's the correct one.
Yeah, it's the only one I have. I didn't see the other one. Good. Okay, so I will, if it's okay with the chair, I'll make the motion. Or is there some changes you would like to make?
I guess make your motion, and then I might offer a friendly amendment.
All right. I move a resolution of the Rental Housing Committee of Mountain View adopting Regulation Chapter 10, Just Cause for Eviction.
Is there a second?
I second it.
And then, I guess, Emily, would you be open to moving it from 3 days to 7 days post vacate? I don't want to say vacation, but post vacating the unit.
I accept the amendment.
Okay. All right. So we'll take it to the vote.
Accept the amendment?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Susan, do you accept the amendment? Okay. Great. Thank you. So we'll vote. So we'll start with committee member Hanson.
Aye.
Committee member Susan Almond.
Aye.
Committee member Julian Pardo-Dazal.
Yes.
And Vice Chair Emily Ramos.
Aye.
And I'm also an aye. So it passes unanimously. All right. I would, since we're running up against our 10 o'clock here, I was wondering, Anki, if for the next item, if that's not urgent, is there a chance we can move that to the next?
We can definitely do that.
All right. And what's the procedure to do that? Do we call a vote?
You can ask the members if they're all in agreement to that proposal.
All right, sounds good. So, committee members, raise your hand if you would open to moving the next item off the agenda for this meeting and to the next agenda. All right. Looks like that passes. Great. So we're on to our last item, and that would be item. I lost flipping between tabs here. 8.7, election of a chairperson and vice chair. Is there? Do you have a? All right, we have a presentation.
Very short. So what we do have to do today is to nominate and elect one of the members of the Rental Housing Committee to serve as a chairperson and one member as the vice chair with an annual term from May till April of next year. Here you see a beautiful overview of our current Rental Housing Committee, minus Vanessa, who moved out of the community last February, I believe. As a background, CSFRA in Section 1709 states that annually the committee shall elect one of their members as a chairperson, and it also describes the role and responsibilities of the chair and the vice chair in more detail. Usually, the chairperson gets elected in May, but because the previous chair resigned in December, the current chair was elected from January of 2019 until this month of May in 2020. So the term for the new chairperson and vice chairperson runs again from May 2020 till April 21. So the recommendation today is for the Rental Housing Committee to nominate a new chair and a new vice chair. And that completes my short presentation.
All right. Thank you, Aki. And do we do public comment on this one as well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So we'll start with committee questions. Are there any questions? All right. Seeing none, we'll move to public comments. Would any of the attendees please raise your hand? I see at least one. If you'd like to comment in this section. 2.
All right, let's go ahead and start with Alex. And here we go.
Thank you for your extra long term of service, and I hope you enjoy the extra free time you have.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comment. All right. And Anna?
I just wanted to say I appreciate all the work you've done. I do have a question. Am I allowed to say, like, based on performance tonight, who I would like to see become the chairperson?
It's public comment, so
I can't say anything.
Any comment is welcome. No, you can say anything you'd like.
I think you're doing a great job, so perhaps you as vice chairperson, but I'd love to see Emily Ramos step up. She's done an amazing job trying to protect renters' rights, and so that, to me, I think is really what we're looking for. Thank you for everyone's service.
All right, and thank you very much for your comment. All right, if there are no more public commenters, seeing none, we'll move back to the committee members, and either comments or a motion is in order. All right.
No.
Can I go ahead and nominate someone? I nominate Emily Ramos as the next chair. She would have my full support.
And do you have a recommendation for vice chair? Would you like to make a motion for both?
I'm going to defer on that.
All right. Julian.
Yeah, I mean, I would support Emily. I think Susan would be a great vice chair. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you, Julian.
All right. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I have a quick question to the committee. Like Matthew has said before, I remember when we had to do these votes before, it's always kind of awkward. But in terms of seniority, I mean, I love you, committee member Allman. But in terms of seniority, committee member Pardo-Dizella, did you not want the vice chairmanship?
Julian, I would respectfully decline. I think it's been very impressed by the work everyone's done, but I think I would prefer to have someone else be the vice chair. So I'd take myself out of the running.
I have a question. I was wondering whether Nicole Haynes whether she's eligible because she's an alternate. It's just a technical question.
I don't believe I am.
Yeah, I don't believe because she's still sitting in an alternate role.
Right.
She's eligible.
Yeah.
But I would make a motion to have Emily as the chair and Susan as the vice chair. I would be eligible to make that motion, I think.
All right. Do we have a second?
I second.
All right. Julian. Otherwise, I was going to. So, all right. So we'll take a vote. So let's start with committee member Nicole Haynes.
I will vote for my motion.
All right. Then Susan Allman.
I will vote for it. I'm not sure I want the responsibility, but I don't think there's anybody left.
Julian?
Kind of stuck with me.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And then Emily.
Aye.
All right. And then I am also aye. So the motion passes. Congratulations to Emily and Susan as our new vice chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, as my last, we're a little over the 10 o'clock deadline that I try to keep under, so apologies there. And also, we do have committee and staff updates. So, congratulations, but I will try to move us through quickly so we can all get back to our lives. Honky, did you want to start, or do you have some updates?
I think it's Patricia or Andrea. Yeah.
It's me. There we go. I could not figure out how to unmute myself for a second. I'm juggling a couple things on this end. There we go. All right. So we're going to start with item 9.1, where we'll be reviewing programs that have recently been passed by City Council in response to the COVID-19 health crisis. And the City Council adopted these programs sort of mid to late March in an attempt to maintain the safety and habitability of all residents in Mountain View due to this health crisis pandemic. So the first program we'll review is a temporary eviction moratorium. The eviction moratorium suspends evictions for non-payment of rent for residential tenants who have been financially impacted by COVID-19. The moratorium applies to all residential tenants, including everybody from single-family homes, mobile home spaces, and of course includes the CSFRA covered units as well. So basically it covers all tenants who are renting in Mountain View. The moratorium is effective from March 27th, 2020 to May 31st, but that date can be extended by City Council if they decide. Tenants who are experiencing significant decrease in income because of COVID-19 must, 1, notify their landlord in writing 7 days after rent is due, and that notice can be through text message, an email, or a letter, as long as it's in writing. They must also provide documentation of financial loss to the landlords at least within 14 days after rent becomes due. And staff has also created a form, and that's on our website that you see at the bottom of the screen here, so that the tenants can easily notify their landlord, both of the 7-day notice and the 14-day documentation. And the last thing that I want to mention is once the moratorium ends, that past due rent becomes payable within 120 days. So another thing to note is during the moratorium, landlords are prevented from evicting tenants who are unable to pay their rent due to COVID-19 impacts, and they are also prohibited from charging late fees for that past due rent amount that is related to the moratorium. We also have the Mountain View Mediation Program, which is free and confidential service that Mountain View has provided for many years, that is currently working hard to provide both landlords and tenants a way to easily negotiate rent repayment plans. So this program is implemented by the rent stabilization staff. Anybody interested can visit our website there at mountainview.gov/eviction relief, or call the Mountain View Rental Housing Helpline for assistance. All right, our next program is the Rent Relief Program. This program was passed by the City Council to provide financial assistance to residential tenants who are unable to pay their rent, also due to COVID-19 related impacts. In order to qualify for the program, a residential household can make up to 120% of the area median income. So this would be either up to $110,000 for a one-person household or up to $158,000 for a four-person household, as an example. Tenants must provide documentation for their COVID-19 related financial hardship and can qualify to receive $3,000 per month for up to 2 months. As of May 1st, a little over 1,700 households have applied for assistance. Of those households, 417 have either received assistance or have been approved to receive assistance. And the average benefit that households are receiving is about $2,057. Households who apply to the program after it reaches its maximum capability will be added to a wait list and contacted if any additional funding becomes available. The City Council has so far allocated $1.6 million for the rent relief program and is looking to add an additional $1 million possibly tomorrow at their meeting. So this program is implemented by the Community Services Agency, or commonly known as CSA, and interested households are urged to use email at renthelp@csacares.org. All right, next we'll review the Small Landlord Relief Program. So this program allows landlords with no more than 9 rental units who have been financially impacted by the health crisis to apply for a loan if they have experienced a reduction in rental income due to the pandemic. So the landlord must demonstrate a minimum of 25% loss of rental income due to tenants being unable to pay their rent because of COVID-19. And landlords may be affected by the eviction moratorium that we talked about earlier when tenants are not able to pay because they are also experiencing some financial hardship due to the pandemic. Landlords can receive up to $5,000 per month up to $1,000 per affected unit, if that applies, for a period of 2 months pending funding availability. The City Council has approved $100,000 in funding for the Small Landlord Relief Program at this point. So the loan is a 0% interest loan. The loan term is up to 12 months. The landlord must be in good standing with the city to qualify for this loan, which would also include being in compliance with the CSFRA for those properties that are applicable. And it is important to note that no eviction of tenants may be pursued for non-payment of rent until that loan has been repaid. This program is implemented also by the Rent Stabilization Program in partnership with Main Street Launch, and interested parties can submit a loan inquiry form to that website there, mainstreetlaunch.org, or contact our very own Patricia Black and visit the website mountainview.gov/SBRP. And lastly, we will review the Utility Relief Program. This program provides residents with COVID-19 related hardships a one-time $50 credit to apply to a utility bill payment. Any resident of Mountain View who makes less than 80% of the area median income can apply for this one-time credit and put it towards either their water, sewer, garbage, or recycling bill. This would also include households, for example, that make less than $78,550 for one person, or up to about $120,000 for a four-person household. During the duration of the COVID-19 emergency declaration and for an undefined period afterwards, there will be no utility shutoffs or late fees applied to the utility bills. And interested parties should call or email the Mountain View Finance Department, who is implementing this program, at revenuestaff@mountainview.gov, or you can give them a phone call at the number listed in the presentation. So that concludes sort of the 4 programs that are benefiting landlords and tenants passed by City Council, and we can have any questions at this time.
I'll just start with a quick comment. Just thank you to staff for working with City Council to support all these measures. I think it's much needed in the community, and just appreciate your hard work on this. Any other comments or questions on this item before we move to the monthly report? Sure, Emily.
Is there anything more our committee can do to help out with these efforts?
Sorry, to help who?
Is there anything our committee can do to help out with a number of these efforts? The rent relief program, the small landlord program, the utility relief program. You did a great job with the voluntary decrease, but is there anything else that comes to mind that we can do, that we can agendize to help?
I'll open that up to all staff.
We constantly evaluate measures and think about ways that the CSFRA program might be able to help. And when we come up with new ideas, we'll definitely bring them to the Rental Housing Committee.
Also, we have on the website, and I would be happy to share any links with anyone, staff has made short videos about the eviction moratorium that are actually on YouTube in English, Spanish, and Chinese, and it would be fantastic if people felt comfortable sharing those through any social media channels or any contact list that you know. There's also a fact sheet on the website in Spanish, English, and Chinese about the moratorium in regards to the small landlord relief program. There is on the landlord information page for the eviction moratorium at mountainview.gov/eviction relief/landlord info information there, and on that SBRP webpage that Andrea mentioned. So if anyone feels comfortable sharing information, that is a great way to assist in getting word out about everything that the city is doing. And if you follow the Mountain View City Hall web page for Facebook, they are sending out information on these programs as well. So you can definitely learn more about them through those channels and get the word out. That would be very helpful for us all.
I just wanted to say that just today I ran into a couple of community members, and they were so impressed with the postcard and the webinars, and said that we should put your staff in charge of the country, and we'd all be a lot better off. I just wanted to pass that along.
All right, thanks. Any other comments or questions? All right, moving right along.
There we go. Okay. Item 9.2 is the monthly status report for February and March. I am going to go over this at a very high level because the eviction moratorium and COVID-19 has made a lot of this information relatively out of date. So I'm going to just entirely skip February, and if anyone has any questions about February's data and information, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to answer anything. For March, we saw a significant increase in information requests related to just cause eviction protections, and also we had a pretty good jump in phone calls and a decrease in walk-ins month over month because of the pandemic. We did see one conciliation. We still have a petition, a landlord petition that is in the petition process. However, that process is suspended for now. And when you look at the overview here, you see 2 tenant petitions. Those are related to that landlord petition. And again, those services are suspended, although we will be talking about how to potentially hold that those petitions, especially as we get closer to having the AGA increases and tenant hardship petitions that might come up. If we continue to be remote, we will look into alternative mechanisms and methods for petition processes other than in-person meetings. We'll probably end up doing telephone calls like the Supreme Court is, and Zoom meetings for people who are technologically able to access information that way. The vacancy rate has dropped a little bit to 3.7%. Our average effective rent continues to go up for all types of buildings year over year. So we're still seeing increases in that and a decrease in the vacancy rate, which is expected. We had one termination for breach of lease and had a few more households, 4 more households that received assistance related to projects that were already in the work for Treo. There have been no properties that have gone into redevelopment for 2020. and therefore no units that have been affected by new trailer applications either. We've also seen no multifamily properties being sold, which means no units have been sold, but there are 2 properties that are up for sale. We did not hold a CSFRA-related workshop in March, and we did have, right before the shelter-in-place went into effect, a few landlords and a few tenants come by the office to receive assistance. We did do 1 mailing related to the CSFRA, and we had a few MyMV updates that went out and a few MV Voice advertisements. And then the Consumer Price Index, as you can see there, is the February index. At the time of this, the April index was not available. It will be available in mid-May. And right now, the CPI all items year over year for that 3-year span is at 16%. For housing, it's at 22%. And for the rent of primary residence, the one that we use for our petitions, it's at 26%. And we are ready to move on to the next section. So instead of workshops like we normally would have here, we are, as you both noted, your rent stabilization staff is running the eviction moratorium, eviction relief program, and doing webinars related to that program. We have 2 this week, 1 tomorrow at 3 o'clock, and 1 on May 7th, Thursday at 6 p.m. And we go over all of the information about the eviction relief moratorium. And then on May 21st, we will have our first webinar for CSFRA-related items, and that will be through Zoom at 6:30 p.m., and it will be about maintaining habitability instead of the tenant-specific presentation that we were going to have for our live workshop. We will have one that is open to everyone, landlords and tenants. And just like we're doing for the eviction relief webinars, we'll send out communication with a link, and we'll run ads through Mountain View Voice online newspaper with that link so people can register and participate. We have seen through the eviction relief webinars that people who might not normally be comfortable asking questions or attending our workshops are actually attending the webinars. So as we move forward and away from the pandemic, we will definitely now host not only live and in-person webinars, but also, live and in-person workshops, but also webinars every month. So we'll do the same presentation in both platforms to reach as many people as possible. And that concludes 9.3. And that concludes Jeff's presentation.
All right. Thank you very much for the presentation. Also want to say just thank you again to everyone for bearing with us over Zoom, and to Andrea for being in person down at City Hall. So appreciate that. And congratulations again to Emily and Susan. And with that, we're adjourned.
Emily has her hand raised.
Oh, sure. Sure, Emily.
Sorry, I just had a quick question about the monthly status reports. So the legend for the pie graph for information requests kind of stops after the rollback. I wanted to know what was the yellow and the orange pieces of pie in the pie graph.
Oh, well, would you look at that? It sure does. I apologize for that. Let me pull that up for you. Give me one moment, Emily. Oh, and that being said, I actually did want to provide an update on the calls that the Mountain View Rental Housing Helpline is received for April, which is not in these reports. They received 87 calls in April related to COVID-19, and 54 of those, so 74% of them were for covered rental units, and they included concerns related to the pandemic and rent increases, lease renewals, lease breaks, and adding roommates. There were a lot of lease break issues where tenants now need to relocate because they lost their job or they need to care for a sick relative, and they're unable to do so without penalties. And the landlords are still holding tenants liable for rent or implementing a 2 to 3 month rent penalty and are resistant to other options. So that was specific and related to the pandemic, and something to just be aware of in a timely, in the current time and moment. So I did want to share that, even though the monthly status report for April is not available yet.
All right, thank you.
And I'm pulling up that information right now for you, Emily.
Thank you. I guess while you're pulling that up, thank you, former Chair Matthew, for your service. Longest running chair of the RHC. It's going to be the record for a long time.
On a technicality, but yeah.
I want to echo that. Thank you so much for your leadership, Matt.
And thank you, staff, for your work, especially during this whole COVID crisis. I have been getting also contacted from different tenants concerned about a lot of these COVID issues, and I've been forwarding them to the the rent helpline. Hopefully it's not giving you too much issues, and I figure that's better for the data if I just send them off your way. Hopefully we'll find more we can do, more carrots.
So, Emily, to clarify, those last two sections, the orange, the aqua, and the other yellow, are hardship petition related. So that's 7 inquiries over the course of the past fiscal year. Habitability is the orange at 49. And then other CSFRA related matters are used to that.
When we get April, will there be a separate section for COVID related?
I can request that from the Mountain View Rental Housing Helpline to see if they can break out the data fully that way.
Thank you.
That'd be great.
All right. And with that, I think we're adjourned for this meeting until June 1st. So thank you all, and we'll see you then.